The year was 1941. As the sun rose over the vast plains of the Soviet Union, a storm was already on its way. The German war machine, unstoppable across Europe, was preparing for the biggest invasion in human history. Operation Barbarossa. Over 3 million Axis soldiers. Thousands of tanks, aircraft, and artillery pieces. A military juggernaut moving east, convinced of a swift victory. Hitler believed the Soviet Union would collapse in just a few weeks. His generals believed the Red Army was weak, poorly trained, and badly equipped. They believed their panzer divisions would crush any resistance in their path. But what they didn't know was that deep inside Soviet factories, behind layers of secrecy, a new beast of steel had already been born. A tank unlike anything Germany had ever seen. A tank that would shock their commanders, destroy their morale, and challenge their belief of invincibility. This is the story of the T-34. The tank Germany never expected. The machine that changed the course of World War II. When the Germans first crossed the Soviet border, morale was high and confidence was supreme. Their Panzer III and Panzer IV tanks had dominated the battlefields of Europe. They expected the same easy victories in the East. And in the first few weeks, they got them. Soviet units retreated in chaos. Hundreds of Soviet tanks were destroyed on the ground before they ever reached the battlefield. German soldiers joked that most Soviet tanks looked like they were built in a garage. But soon, their laughter would fade. As German panzer groups pushed deeper into Soviet territory, reports began to come in, strange reports. Units claiming they were attacked by a new Soviet tank that their shells simply bounced off. A tank that appeared suddenly out of smoke and dust, firing with deadly accuracy, then disappearing back into the trees. German commanders dismissed these claims at first. But soon, they would see the truth with their own eyes. One hot afternoon near the town of Dubno, a German panzer unit advanced confidently across open ground when a group of unfamiliar Soviet tanks emerged from the tree line. The Germans fired first. Their armor-piercing shells hit the Soviet machines and ricocheted off like stones thrown at a steel wall. The Soviet tanks turned their turrets. Their 76mm guns roared. German tanks exploded within seconds. Panic spread. It was the first major encounter between German forces and the T-34. And it stunned them. The T-34 was not just another tank. It was a revolution. It had slope armor that deflected shells instead of absorbing them, a concept the Germans had barely begun to explore. It had wide tracks that allowed it to move effortlessly through mud, snow, and soft ground where German tanks struggled and sank. It carried a powerful 76mm gun that could destroy any panzer from hundreds of meters away. And it was fast, shockingly fast for its size. German tank crews suddenly found themselves facing a machine that was better protected, better armed, and better suited for the harsh terrain of the Eastern Front. German generals were stunned. Some refused to believe the reports at first, thinking their crews had exaggerated the threat. But when captured T-34s were examined, the shock turned to fear. The German army, which had believed it possessed the best tank force in the world, suddenly realized it was outmatched. Hitler himself was furious. He demanded to know why Germany did not have a tank like the T-34. His engineers could only respond with embarrassment. The Germans had over-engineered their machines, focusing on precision instead of practicality. The Soviets had created a tank that was simple, cheap to produce, easy to repair, and deadly in combat. But the T-34's story was not just about engineering. It was also about the people who operated it. Soviet tank crews knew they were fighting not just for victory, but for survival. The German invasion was brutal. Entire towns were burned. Civilians murdered. Soldiers executed. Soviet tankers fought with a desperation the Germans did not expect. Inside the cramped, hot interior of the T-34, where temperatures could reach unbearable levels, crews worked together like a single living machine. Many were young, barely trained, sometimes given only a few hours of instruction before being thrown into battle. Yet the T-34's simplicity allowed them to learn quickly. And its rugged design allowed it to take heavy punishment and keep fighting. As German forces advanced toward Moscow, they faced increasing numbers of T-34s. At first, the Soviets had only a few hundred. But by the end of the war, they would build over 57,000 of them, more than any other tank model in history. Every German commander feared the same sound, the deep, thunderous roar of the T-34's engine emerging from the morning mist. In battle after battle, it gained a terrifying reputation. Even elite German tank units reported heavy losses. Panzer commanders began requesting special tactics just to try to stop it. But even then, the T-34 often outmaneuvered them. It could climb hills German tanks couldn't. It could cross rivers and swampy ground that stopped the Panzers in their tracks. It could fight in freezing temperatures that caused German engines to fail. By winter of 1941, the Germans realized they were not fighting an inferior enemy, they were fighting a nation capable of producing a tank that could dominate the battlefield. And as the snow began to fall, the T-34 became the master of the Eastern Front. Its wide tracks gripped the frozen earth effortlessly while German tanks slid and struggled. The Soviets launched counterattacks, with T-34s leading the charge. The German advance ground to a halt. The myth of German invincibility had finally been broken. As the war continued, the T-34 evolved. The T-34-85, with a new turret and a more powerful gun, became even deadlier. It could now take on the feared German Panther and Tiger tanks. While German tanks were technically impressive, they were slow to produce, complicated to repair, and too few in number. The Soviets, on the other hand, built T-34s by the thousands. Even if one was destroyed, two more would replace it. The Germans simply could not keep up. German soldiers gave the T-34 many nicknames, none of them friendly. Some called it the Green Devil. Others simply cursed it as a nightmare they hoped never to face again. Many German veterans later admitted that the first time they saw a T-34, they knew the war would not be easy. Some even knew, in that moment, that Germany might lose. But what made the T-34 so unforgettable was not just its armor or firepower, but its symbolism.